Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And when you hear the word from God, it will make you God. Chapter 13, 52, line number 52. So Jesus is continuing his instruction. He had already spoken about the end harvest. The harvest is the end of the world. It's a very interesting statement. The harvest is the end of the world. It's a very intriguing statement. When the end of the world transpires, two things get harvested or cut or reaped. One is, of course, the end of the world disappears. You don't even know from where it appeared, because the whole universe is an appearance on God's being. And then it relapses back into God. It's God's source from which it emanated by the will of God. And when the will of God transpired as per what it was mentioned in the Genesis, the creation took place and transpired. And so too also the end of the world will also similarly take place. When God harvests the harvest, and at that time the end of the world will transpire, and you too as an individual who was part of this creation, you too will also be harvested. And then thereafter, what is left thereafter is your supreme state, wherein you will be one with God as God. So that is what will take place. So he had mentioned that in a veiled, camouflaged, mystical way. Then he says now in line number 52, therefore said he unto them, therefore every scribe which is instructed unto the kingdom of heaven is like unto a man that is a householder. A scribe, who is a scribe? A scribe is one who is well versed in the scriptures. He knows the scriptures. So therefore he says, so every scribe which is instructed, who has been instructed unto the kingdom of heaven, which is now being presented by Jesus to the multitude. So when the scribes too receive this teaching, it's like unto a man that is a householder. They will be like a householder. That's interesting, the word householder. A householder, of course, a family man. Householder means a family man. He always accumulates many things. and stores them up because he needs them at some time or the other for his use. So here also, what is that the scribe accumulates? So he accumulates, he bringeth forth out of his treasures things new and old. The old was the old teachings which he had previously had, the old teachings. Whatever teachings were there, which he was well versed with, they were the old teachings, the old. And new, the new is his instruction or the teachings which he had heard and listened, which is said to be the New Testament. So one is the Old Testament, the old teachings, which he was familiar with, and now the New Testament. So both treasures, out of his treasure, things new and old. So therefore, both the Old and the New Testament. So now it's not only the scribe. For every person in the world who is well versed in the scriptures is a scribe, could be likened to a scribe. And therefore every person who knows and understands the scriptures is an heir to both the Old Testament, which is the old treasure, treasures old, and treasures new, which is the New Testament, which the teaching given by Jesus. And this statement is meant for the entire human race, for every individual, that he should make himself familiar with the Old and the New Testament. For the Old Testament gives him the foundation to live life, the basic foundation, and the superstructure is built on the teachings of the New Testament, which shows you the way to salvation. You have to live by the teachings. Then he says in 53, and it came to pass that when Jesus had finished these parables, he departed from there. And when he was come into his own country, he taught them in their synagogue, in his own country. In his own country he stands for Nazareth. He came back to Nazareth. That's his own country where he was born and bred. Nazareth. That's why he was called as the Nazarene. He was called the Nazarene for that purpose. That was where he lived in the formative years of his life. Of course, he was born in Bethlehem, but later on his parents came and settled down in Nazareth, and therefore he was called a Nazarene in his own country, and he taught them in their synagogue. He taught them in their synagogue, in so much that they were astonished, because it was this. They were astonished and said, whence hath this man this wisdom and these mighty works? From where has this person acquired this wisdom and these mighty works? From whence? The question is, when it is said from whence, he was born with it. As a Messiah, he was born with wisdom. There was no need for him to learn it from anybody or anywhere. It was inborn to his nature. That's why he is a Messiah. Of course, as a formality, he may go through a formal studentship just to be an example unto others. But otherwise his knowledge is inborn. And these mighty works too, the power, because he is functioning with God power. So though they were also inborn to him. So the people, they were shocked. Is not this the carpenter's son? Is not this Joseph's son? Is not his mother called Mary? He is Mary's son. And his brethren, James and Joseph and Simon and Judas. So Jesus had 4 brothers. It's very clear. Perhaps they were his stepbrothers, perhaps. Because Joseph was not his biological father. He was conceived by the Holy Spirit. Huh? So therefore, Joseph is a stepfather. Huh? While Mary was the biological mother. So since Mary was the Blessed Mother who gave birth to Jesus, she is revered in the world. She is revered and respected for having been the mother. So it is said that even in the Indian culture, that they say, blessed is the mother who has given birth to a holy son who would become holy. A son, any woman who has given birth to a son who would become holy in due course is a blessed woman. Is a blessed woman. So that general saying is there in the Indian culture. So in the same way too, Mary is considered to be a blessed woman. Of all women in Israel, God chose Mary. So she must have been a virtuous, noble, good person for God to have chosen Mary. So she also exclaimed that, whence has God made me to be the mother of this blessed child? And God has blessed me. God has blessed me for that. So therefore, Mary was the Blessed Mother, and Joseph had the privilege of being the foster father, because that too is a great privilege. And of course, he has his brothers, the 4 brothers, and then his sisters. Are they not all with us? And they're making reference to his sisters too. So it could be his stepsisters or his cousins, whichever way it is. Whence then had this man all these things? Oh, he is one amongst us. He came from us. How did this person have all these capacities, this wisdom, and their capacities? How did they have? So they are all astonished. And they were offended by him. They were offended in him. Because they could not appreciate it. They could not fully appreciate it. He's our little fellow. You know, they say, he's our little chap. Now he's being a big master. It's a little too much. We were the elders, we were the aunts and uncles and elders, and he was going in our midst, running about in shorts, sometimes even without it, as a little fellow. And now he claims that he is it's a little too much for us to acknowledge. So they were a little bit offended. But Jesus said unto them, so Jesus now says something very interesting. A prophet is not without honor. He is all, that means he is received with honor everywhere. A prophet. With honor, wherever he goes, he is received. Save in his own country and in his own house. So in his own country, they say, this person, he is from our country, can't be. From our place, from our village, no, impossible. So in his own country, he is not very much honored. He is not very much honored. And in his own house also. In his own house also. So they were going about playing with each other's brothers and sisters and cousins and friends. And now we have to go honor him. So it's a little too much for them. So that is why old friends, even when they meet after 30, 40 years, they are the same old good old buddies, as they say, good old friends. Who, whatever they be, whether one was a successful person or the other person wasn't it doesn't matter. Once they meet after, as they call it, the schoolboy reunion. They call it nowadays the reunion, class reunion. So when they have this class reunion, it doesn't matter what they are today, but they only remember their old friendship. And they put their arms around each other as good old friends as they did before. No, we can't do that to Jesus. Impossible. Because he is now an exalted character. We have to even get his permission to come near you. A little too much. So therefore he says, a prophet is not honored in his own home and in his country where he was. Nevertheless, he did not many mighty works there because of their unbelief. Because of their unbelief, they refused to believe him. So therefore he did not do all those mighty works like healing, curing, all that in that city, in that hometown of Nazareth. Then chapter 14. At that time Herod the Tetrarch heard of the fame of Jesus. So Herod heard of the fame of Jesus. He was the ruler at that time in that part, and said unto his servants, this is John the Baptist. He is risen from the dead, and therefore mighty works do show forth themselves in him. So he is asking a question. Is this John the Baptist who has risen again? And therefore these mighty works do show for themselves in him? These mighty works are being done by him. Is it John the Baptist? For Herod was a little perturbed because he was the one who had executed John the Baptist. So he was a little concerned whether now John the Baptist has come back, but God knows what he may do to us, do to me. So he says, for he was a little perturbed. For Herod had laid hold on John and bound him and put him in prison for Herodias' sake, his brother Philip's wife. For Herod had caught hold of John, bound him, and put him into prison. For Herodias, his wife, his current wife, who was, for Herodias' sake, who was his brother Philip's wife, who was previously his brother Philip's wife. So it was improper. His alliance with this woman was highly improper. And for John said unto him, it is not lawful for thee to have it is not lawful, it's very incorrect for you to do this. So, and this statement, the woman got offended. She got very upset and angry over this. Upset. And when he would have put him to death, he feared the multitude. So Herod would have put him to death, would have killed him immediately. Because he had made a statement which offended him and highly displeased his wife. So the poor fellow has to displease his wife. That's the tragedy of man's life too at times. Wherein women, sometimes a man has to do many things to please their wives. So here also Herod was in such a position, even though he did not want to, but he was a little afraid of the multitude of the people around, because they counted him as a prophet, because the people counted John the Baptist as a prophet, and he was a little afraid to put him to death. But then circumstances came in the way. And what was that? But when Herod's birthday party was kept, there was a birthday party which Herod had. And in that birthday party, the daughter of Herodias danced. So she had danced in that party. And that daughter is said to, her name is Salome. Salome is the name. And though Salome's name is not written, not given in the Bible, in the historical records of Josephus. Josephus was a historian at that time who recorded history. And in Josephus' history, he records the name of Herod and his daughter, that is the daughter Salome who danced. So Salome's name is given there. Salome's name is given there. And Josephus was a historian. And he had also mentioned about, because sometimes people think about the historicity of Jesus, whether Jesus did exist or not. This question is being asked today. There was never a doubt before. But our modern people are so skeptical. They want a rational scientific explanation. They are not content with many facts and truths. So therefore, fortunately, the old historian Josephus had made records. He had recorded in his historical statements that there was a person, a holy person, who went about teaching, and he did many miraculous things. He was moving about, and many people followed him. So all that is recorded. So this recording itself is a proof of the presence of Jesus, of the existence of Jesus, because it was recorded in ancient history. It was indicated in ancient history by the well-known historian Josephus.
Was he contemporary? Was he contemporary?
About a little after, say about that time.
As I have talking about.
Yes, he was just about.
I have read that there were no contemporary things, and this gentleman, actually with the same person, Josephus, didn't mention anything related to Christ. So
didn't mention.
Yes, I heard the opposite.
Oh, you have, but here the historians say that he did mention Josephus about this unusual person. So there is a historical recording of that. And so therefore, when Herod was pleased by the dancing, and with his wine too, he was perhaps a little out of balance. So he promised the girl that he would give her he gave an oath and promised her that he would give her what she wanted. Whereupon he promised with an oath to give her whatever she would ask. And she being before instructed of her mother, she being previously itself told by her mother what to ask in case he promises something, said, "Give me here John Baptist's head in a charger on a plate. I want his head." And the king was very sorry. It was a highly improper request. You can make a request, but the request should always be proper. It is a highly irregular, improper request. And therefore, the king was sorry. Nevertheless, for the oath's sake, because he had made an oath, he felt that he had to comply with it, and he commanded it to be given her. So he gave the order that so be it. So be it. And he sent and beheaded John in the prison. And his head was brought in a charger and given to the damsel, and she brought it to her mother. So a woman's vengeance can be very terrible. And his disciples came and took up the body and buried it and went and told Jesus. And his disciples came and took the headless body and buried it and went and told Jesus. When Jesus heard of it, he departed thence by ship into a desert place apart. So after that, Jesus also did not want to stay there. It is a dangerous place. When there is danger or a dangerous place, it is better to promptly to leave. And when the people had heard thereof that he had left, they followed him on foot out of the cities. So and Jesus went forth and saw, when Jesus had gone to the desert place, and the people followed him, and Jesus went forth and saw a great multitude, and he saw a great multitude who had assembled in the desert to see him, and was moved with compassion towards them. And he was moved with compassion because they had come from their respective cities far away into the desert, and he healed their sick. So he was moved with compassion. So that's one of the qualities of a person, of a holy, noble person or a holy person. So one should always have compassion. And when it was evening, and now the evening time has come, his disciples came to him and said, this is a desert place, and the time is now past, and it is evening time, and for there is send the multitude away, because there is nothing for them to eat. This evening time, and that they may go into the villages and buy themselves victuals. That send these people away so that they may go, give an order. They may go to the villages, surrounding villages, and obtain some food. But Jesus said unto them, they need not depart. They need not go. Give ye them to eat. Give them something. Give them something to eat. Give them to eat. And they say unto him, we have here only but 5 loaves, and only 5 loaves and 2 fishes. He said, bring them hither to me, bring them here. And he commanded the multitude to sit down on the grass. He commanded the people around to sit on the grass. Took the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes, and looking up to heaven, he blessed and brake. He blessed it, looking up to heaven. He blessed it and and broke the bread and gave the loaves to his disciples, and the disciples to the multitude. So he gave the loaves, having blessed it, looking up to heaven. Thereafter he gave the loaves, and the loaves began multiplying. Gave it to his disciples, and the disciples in turn began giving it to the multitude who was seated. They gave them. And mysteriously, the bread began to multiply. And they did all eat, and were filled, and they ate to their heart's content, or to the belly's content. And they took up the fragments that remained, 12 baskets full. And even after they were all fed, the multitude was fed, there was still 12 baskets full of bread left. And they had eaten, and they that had eaten were about 5,000 men, beside women and children. So which means that there could have been more than 5,000, because 5,000 men plus women and children. It could have been 7, 8, 10,000, who knows? So, this is the way of the Lord, the ones. And this feeding the multitude by Jesus was something very natural. Though people consider it to be a miracle, For these people, the Messiah has this capacity. Even holy people have this capacity. I may relate to you an incident which transpired in Jaffna in Sri Lanka. There was this holy man called Yogeshwarananda, living as a hermit in a little hut, a little mud hut. That was his abode, a mud hut thatched with palm leaves. And the rich and the mighty of the land came to see him. But nevertheless, he just lived in a little humble hut. Many people came to have their audience with him. And one day, a busload of people came from the city of Colombo, 250 miles away, to Jaffna to have his audience. And they arrived at about noontime, and they were hungered, of course, because it is a 6-hour journey. They were hungered. And then soon after they had come, then there appeared a lorry filled with rice, vegetables, lentils. And the truck driver said, "This has come from Kandy, from the Kandyan province. It has been sent to you by this person." So people naturally accepted the truckload of rice and vegetables and lentils, and they prepared the food, and the busload of people consumed their food. Later on, when it was asked by the person in Kandy, "Did you send this on this day?" He said, "No, I did not. I have no idea of it. I'm just coming to know about it." So what this holy man had done was, he had produced a truck with a human driver, with all the ingredients to eat. On his own, he had just manifested them. So therefore, this capacity these holy people have, and even what to speak of Jesus. Because he was a Messiah, it was naturally possible to him. So therefore, it so happened. So therefore, it's not an impossible thing. It's very much possible that Jesus fed the multitude with five loaves and 2 fishes. He fed the entire multitude. Then, and straightway, 22, and straightway Jesus constrained his disciples to get into a ship and to go before him unto the other side, while he sent the multitudes away. Then straightway after this incident, Jesus instructed his disciples to get into a ship and go to the other side before he could come. That you better go to the other side. And that at the same time he sent away the people, having given them a feast of food. He sent them away. Now go back. And when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up into a mountain apart to pray. He went apart alone to the mountain which was beside, to pray, pray alone. And when the evening was come, he was there alone. You have to be alone to be with God. He was alone there in the mountains. So then only you can be with God. And apart to pray. So he was there praying to God. So this is prayers. The word pray is synonymous with word worship That's another word. How to pray, people often ask this question. How to pray to God? How to worship God? They are both synonymous words. How to pray, how to worship. Another word for it is contemplation. You contemplate on God. So in worship and in prayers, there is one common feature. That common feature is a reverential attitude. A reverential attitude which the person who prays has towards God. So it is your reverential attitude which maketh it a prayer. Your reverential attitude. So it is in this manner that one has to pray, and you pray in silence. Silence is more eloquent. So it is a prayerful state. When you pray, you should be in a prayerful state of intense silence, with an attitude, with a prayerful attitude. So this alone constitutes true prayers or true worship, not mumbling of words. That's a distraction. Not services. That too is a distraction. Services, ritualistic services, rituals, it's a distraction. It's a spectacle. It's a spectacle. So when the services are going on, it's a spectacle. Right? So, but in true worship, you're distracted by the service. So therefore, in a true prayers, in true worship, you are in silent communion with God. It's a prayerful state. So therefore, now Jesus is giving an example to mankind, wherein he too prayed. He went to a lonely place to pray, to the mountains, all alone. So this was an example to humanity. It was an example to humanity. So every time that a person prays, he renews himself. He renews himself. So therefore, the more and more a person prays, he is renewing himself into the image of God. To be in the image of God, he is renewing himself. To be God, eventually he will be. So this was Jesus' intention. But the ship, which was boarded by his disciples, and they had instructed them to go to the other side, so that he would have time to do his prayers here, conduct his prayers. But the ship was now in the midst of the sea. It was in the middle of the sea, tossed with waves, because that part of the region, I am told, is unpredictable. It has got an unpredictable weather, and quite often you know not at which time and which place the sea can be turbulent. So as a result of this, for the wind was contrary. But the ship was now in the midst of the sea and tossed with waves, and it was tossed about. For the wind was contrary. And in the fourth watch of the night, perhaps fourth watch must be between 3 and 6 in the morning, of the night, Jesus went unto them, and Jesus went up to his disciples who were on board the ship, walking on the sea. Jesus was walking on the sea. That's another unusual thing. They could walk. They could move in the firmament, in the sky. They could walk on the sea as if just like walking on solid earth. They could also walk on water, on the sea. So walking on the sea. Now people think this is a very miraculous thing. But those who are holy can do this. It's very natural for them. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled. They were frightened. Who is this apparition? What is this apparition coming to us from a distance? Because they could not recognize him as he was in a distance too. And the sea was in turbulence, frothing. And they were troubled, saying, it is a spirit, it is a spirit. It should be, because it is walking on the sea. And they cried out for fear, and they got afraid and cried out in lamentation. But straightway Jesus spake unto them, saying, but Jesus saw and heard their lamentation. Be of good cheer, don't be frightened, be of good cheer. It is I, it is I, it is me. Be not be afraid. But do not be afraid. It's not something else. And Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it be thou, bid me come unto thee on the ocean, on the water. So Peter is always very impulsive, because wherever Peter, because he is full of affection and respect for Jesus, but at the same time he is very impulsive too, spontaneously. So Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it be thou, bid me come unto thee on water. All right, if you are the person, then tell me to come. And he said, come. And Jesus said, all right, come. And when Peter was come down, when he came out of the boat and got onto the water, out of the ship, he walked on the water to go on Jesus, to go to Jesus. And he began walking on the water. But he could have walked if he had not had a hesitation. If he had not had a doubt, he could have walked. But unfortunately for the poor chap, he doubted whether it is possible or not. So this is what is called, if he had unconditional trust in the words of Jesus, he would have walked. But he had a little doubt, and therefore he began sinking. He began sinking. So, but when he saw the wind boisterous, he was a little afraid and beginning to sink. He began to sink. And he cried out saying, Lord, save me. Lord, save me. And immediately Jesus stretched forth his hand and caught him and said unto him, O thou of little faith, wherefore didst thou doubt? What type of faith did you have? Didn't you? You didn't have sufficient faith in me. If you had doubt, if you had that faith, you would have walked. You would have walked. For thou of little faith, wherefore didst thou doubt? Where was the need for you to doubt? For you know very well who I am, that I am the Messiah, that you know that. So when I said, come, come. And when they were come into the ship, the wind ceased. And then both of them got on board the ship, and the wind ceased. Then they that were in the ship came and worshipped him, saying, so then the others who were on board the ship came and worshipped Jesus, because Jesus had done something extraordinary, which perhaps only a man, an exalted being could do. So therefore they came and worshipped him, saying, of a truth thou art the Son of God. It is true indeed, that thou art the Son of God. That means thou art the Messiah, the promised Messiah. Thou art that indeed. And because there has always been a little doubt, so in order to establish his credentials, for Jesus had to establish his credentials, that he is the promised Messiah. Huh? And in order to establish his credentials, time and again he had to perform these unique miracles. Otherwise people wouldn't believe him. So for that purpose he had to perform this. So he was not a showman. It's not that he was a showman. It was meant to establish his credentials, that he was a special, unique being. And then after this, then these people declared, "Oh, of a truth, thou art the Son of God, thou art indeed the Messiah." And when they were gone over, they came into the land of Gennesaret. That's some land. And when the men of that place had knowledge of him, they sent out into all that country round about, and brought unto him all that were diseased. So when he entered the town, the new town of Gennesaret, the people there already had heard about Jesus. So then they sent the message to all people in the surrounding area to bring their people. Huh? And many of them brought the ones who were diseased, etc. And besought him that they might only touch the hem of his garment. Huh? If we only touch the hem of his garment, we would be healed. So such was their faith. Such was the faith of these people. Of the simple people have more faith. And the so-called intelligently educated people, they are a little skeptical all the time. But the simple people, why? Because their heart is more pure, more clean. And besought him that they might only touch the hem of his garment. And as many as touched were made perfectly whole. They said, "You can just touch your garment, that's all. And we will be healed of whatever ailments." And it was so indeed. It was so indeed. They just touched from all sides. So that is why the shroud of, what do you call it?
Turin.
Huh?
Turin.
Yes, the shroud of Turin is considered to be sacred because it was on the body of Jesus. They are not still able to claim whether it was, some say that it is, by carbon dating, that perhaps it must have been, may have not, may be or may not be. No one knows. But some of them claim, the scientists and others who had done that, the shroud of Turin, that it was that. That's because a garment worn by Jesus has got that capacity. Because it still exudes the power of Jesus. The power of Jesus. So in that belief, they have preserved it. It's a very precious garment.
There's a mystic in northern India. He leads the gets messages plays in. Somebody asked him this. I don't think this mystic knew Christ was. He's just lived in Britain. Perhaps they asked about the Jewish crowd and he said, confirmed it's genuine. And he said, this man still lives, and the messages that he had were still not understood.
So, therefore, it is at places it is confirmed by carbon dating and by other sources too. So, anyhow, that they might only touch the hem of his garment, and as many as touched were made perfectly whole. Then came to Jesus scribes and Pharisees, which were of Jerusalem, saying, So many, then thereafter, chapter 15, many scribes and Pharisees of who were in Jerusalem came to him, because Jerusalem was a center of Israel at that time. So they came to him, they asked him, "Why do thy disciples transgress the tradition of the elders? For they wash not their hands when they eat bread." So they are just asking simple, silly questions. Why do thy disciples transgress the tradition of the elders? The tradition of the elders. So at that time, it was a tradition amongst the Jewish community, especially in the cities, that when they went out into the streets, they would come back home washing their hands. How do you expect persons living in the desert to wash their hands? Where is there water to wash? You can only scrub your hands, right? With your own hands, clear the dust of it and eat. In the desert, where is there water? So anyhow, they wanted to, in some form or the other, say something unpleasant to Jesus. So why do they do that? Now that was a good answer. So it was a good opportunity for Jesus to give a good answer. But he answered and said unto them, "Why do you also transgress the commandments of God by your tradition?" By your tradition. Why do you transgress the commandments of God? So in the Old Testament, the commandments of God has already been given. And these fellows are transgress the commandments of God. Say they transgress it in various forms. The commandments of God by your tradition, your human man-made tradition. Your human man-made traditions. So which is important? A tradition is something very practical. It changes the rules and conventions of a tradition. It changes from time to time. It is not inviolable. It is for practical purposes. So it's a simple thing. But the commandment is a different matter. The commandment is something sacred. It is an injunction given by God, which has to be observed by mortal man. So he says, "For God commanded, saying, Honor thy father and mother. Honor thy father and mother." Till when? Until they depart. Until they leave their body, you have to honor them. How do you honor them? By taking care of them. Respectful. By taking care of the parents, respectful. Why? Because when you were a helpless little baby, your parents spent all their resources, their energy, their time in taking care of you with great difficulty at times, even though you were an impossible case. Every baby requires scrupulous attention virtually 24 hours of the day, either by the mother or the father. And therefore they had raised you up, fed you, nourished you, educated you, looked after you, protected you, did everything for you. And therefore, in old age, when they have become feeble, now it becomes your turn, your duty, or a sacred duty on your part to take care of your feeble parents who are now helpless. So this is a rule of life. A rule of life. It's an inviolable rule of life, wherein you cannot neglect them. You cannot neglect them. Because what they did to you, you too must respond. Even when you were young, you could have been an impossible child. So similarly also, even when they in their old frail state, when they are a little impossible, in old age they become so, still with all patience and with all love, you will have to take care of them, because you are duty bound to do so. You cannot neglect them, you cannot discard them. And say, oh, the state will look after them. No, not so. Not so. Not so. Therefore, you have to take the pains to look after them and use your resources to do so. So that is why he says, and respectfully honor thy father and mother. And one of the, it is not only father and mother. Honor thy elders. Honor thy elders. Whoever they are, honor them. That's very important. And even the Old Testament says this as an injunction. When the elders come, rise up. Get up from your seat. Get up from your seat, rise up. When the elders come. And then, having been seated, you sit. So we too, as monks, when we were young, whenever a senior or an elderly monk came to us, we got up and immediately gave him our seat. Immediately. Because he was an elderly monk. He may have been literate. He may have been illiterate. It mattered little. We will receive him with honor and make him sit down. So therefore, the Old Testament says that rise in the presence of the elders, when the elders come. So, therefore, honor thy father and mother. And he that curseth father or mother, curseth means, oh, what a headache this is. That is how. What a nuisance this old man is, or old woman is. So that is a form of cursing them. So he says, he that curseth father or mother, let him die the death. Let him die the death. He who curseth the father or mother, what a headache this is. And neglect them. So he says, let him die the death. That he is not such a person who does this only deserves death. Such a person. It's a very harsh punishment. Anyhow, why the other text? So, now we'll see the other text, which is a little more clear. Jesus answered, why do you disobey God and follow your own teachings? Why do you disobey God and follow your own teachings? Didn't God command you to respect your father and mother? That is, honor your father and mother. Didn't he tell you to put to death all who curse their parents? How do people curse their parents? As I mentioned a little before, when they speak unpleasantly about them. Whenever you have an unpleasant attitude, a bad attitude towards your elders in this manner, towards especially with your parents, so that is a curse that you are putting upon them, which is not a good thing. So therefore he says, but let you people get by without helping their parents when they should. But in your old man-made tradition, you allow these people, these old people, to get by without helping their parents. You don't help them. Because in your tradition it says that you, whatever you as priest, that whatever you receive in the temple is only meant for the priest, and it is not to be given to anybody. So you take it because you live on that. You live on that. That's where your livelihood is, on all the offerings which have been come to you. And you live on these offerings. But at the same time you say that since these offerings are only meant for the priest, that we don't have to give part of it and provide for our elders. This was a problem. So they said, and this was the tradition of the Jews at that time. These are man-made traditions. Man-made traditions made by these fellows. So that they can escape. Say that this is all meant for us. And we don't have to share it with others or give it to others. So how is it that they're giving it to their children? If they don't want to give it to their parents, how is it that they're giving it to their children? Right? So, that is why Jesus says that you take it all for yourselves and leave your parents destitute. Leave your parents destitute without care. Without care. So you're following your man-made commandments. These are commandments made by you, not by God. These rules. You let them say that what they have has been offered to you, offered by God. So you tell their parents that whatever has come to them, to the priest, has been offered by God and is only meant for us and not for the parents. And thereby you neglect them. So is this any way to show respect to your parents? Is this any way to show respect to your parents? Certainly not. You ignore God's commands in order to follow your own teachings. So it's very clear. You ignore God's commands in order to follow your own teachings. Your own teachings. Because these are teachings which they have invented. These people, the priests have invented their teachings and their ritual and their rules to suit their own convenience. And this is a fallacy found in all religious traditions. In all religious traditions all over the world, it was so then, it is so today. It is so too. So therefore, and you are nothing but. So what has happened in the world is that and thereby honor not his father or his mother, and thereby you do not honor your father or mother, and he shall be free of this obligation. That is this person, that's your teaching, your man-made teaching to say that we are free of this obligation of taking care of our parents. Because what we get is an offering only meant for us. Thus have you made the commandments of God of none effect by your tradition. You hypocrites! Well did Isaiah prophesy of you, saying, of you, saying, These people draweth nigh unto me with their mouth, and honoureth me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. So these people draweth nigh unto me with their mouth. So one of the prophets said, Elias, he had said, these people draweth nigh unto me with their mouth. They come to me with their mouth and honoureth me with their lips. It's lip service. It's what is called as lip service. It doesn't come from their heart, but their heart is far from me. So that is true indeed, all over the world, at all times. The heart of the priest is invariably offered all over the world, in all traditions, not in God. They only make a lip service because they are supposed to say those sayings. But they live their life in indulgences. So in order to receive their offerings and live off that, so they make a lip service because they are supposed to do it. So this is how they function. But their heart is not in me. So if their heart is not in me, they do not deserve to be the priest and what they are doing. It's very clear. Only the one who has the heart in God. But in vain they do worship me. In vain these people worship me, because their heart is not there. Teaching for doctrines, the commandments of men. And these people teach doctrines which have been created and invented by them. So many of the doctrines which are followed, and customs which are followed, and procedures which are followed in the religious tradition were invented by the priest. They were all invented. They are man-made traditions. They were not injunctions given by God or commandments given by God. Right? So it's a very clear thing. In vain do they worship me, teaching for doctrines. So the various forms of doctrines which have been evolved in religious traditions, many forms of doctrines, the Hindu doctrine, the Christian doctrine. The Christian doctrine is often called as the church doctrine. It's called the church doctrine. Why do they call it the church doctrine? Because it is a little different from the teachings of Jesus. The teachings of Jesus are the sayings and the commandments given by Jesus, the rules, the spiritual rules, the ways by which one could attain salvation. Those were the teachings given by Jesus. He showed you the way, very clearly, the way to God, the way to salvation. He gave a teaching, and anyone who understands and lives by that teaching will obtain salvation. He does not have to be a Christian to do so. Anyone who understands and lives by the teachings of Jesus from any part of the world could attain salvation. So also, anyone who understands and lives by the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, contained in the Bhagavad Gita, and the Upanishads, which are Hindu scriptures, could obtain salvation or liberation or enlightenment. They are one and the same words. To do so, he does not have to be a Hindu. In fact, he should not be. If he should be, he has gone into a problem. He has entered into a problem. He should not be. Because now you have got yourself tangled up in a web called a religion. A religion is a web. It's a clean web. And in order to experience God, or in order to obtain salvation or liberation, you have to come out of all forms of conditioning. All forms of conditioning. Of course, you as a human individual, you are a conditioned entity, conditioned by your thoughts, by your feelings, by your emotions. As a result of it, you are a conditioned entity. On top of this, if you get tangled up in another form of conditioning, which is very strong, the religious conditioning, which is a very strong impression, religious impression, that I belong to this religion. That's a religious identification. Now you have to clear this conditioning or this impression out of you in order to get enlightened. As I said, you do not have to be a Christian or a formal Christian in order to obtain salvation, so long as you live by the teachings of Jesus. Live by the teachings of Jesus. The church doctrine is something else. If you get involved with the church doctrine, that's another issue. Another issue altogether. So therefore he says here, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. The church, the doctrines were evolved in due course. Whatever doctrines, the church doctrine was evolved in due course. After 50 years after the ascension of Jesus, it got evolved in due course by the church. But the early Christians, who were the initial followers of the teachings of Jesus, they called their discipline, their spiritual discipline as the way to God. The way to salvation. They called it the way. And the way was open. It's a way, it's a path. It's a path. And you have to live the way. You have to live the teachings. And those teachings were clearly enunciated by Jesus in the Gospels. You find that in the Gospels. So therefore, one has to understand them and live by them. Buddha's teachings too, he enunciated a teaching. Understand it and live by it. And you will attain nirvana. So this is the case with all religions. So therefore, we must live our life based on the scriptural teachings and not by the doctrines and and the commandments of men. That is another separate issue or a separate tradition. So that is what he is saying. That was a fallacy then at that time, and so is the fallacy even today. Even today that is a fallacy, existing in all religions, in all parts of the world. So thus he said that. Om Tat Sat.